Hello, and welcome to the Weshtern Philosophy Podcast. Two friends with oceans of notions discussing the unseen forces in our lives through the lens of music, mystery, and crack. We have a Patreon at Weshtern Philosophy Pod. Don't forget the H. If you're enjoying the show and would like to see it grow, you can join this or make a once-off donation via ko-fi.com. Both links are in the show notes below. On this week's episode, we are joined by sportsman, Gaelgoir, and retreat runner Diarmuid Lyng. Today's conversation is as wide-ranging and fascinating as Diarmuid himself, but one theme that kept coming up was the act of channeling works and creations that are bigger than yourself, which for this episode we label Facilitation.
One of the lads dropped a kind of a bombshell in the middle of it, and it really unveiled himself, and I was like, okay, there's the Facilitator's playbook now. Is like, right, he has to be honoured for his share so he doesn't feel isolated. But instinct is very different to the Facilitator's playbook, and I just didn't say anything. I just sat in it and sat in the silence for a minute, and that level of sharing does not require me to say something as banal as something that was written in a book by somebody else. And then the fella beside him said, if there's anything that I've done in the last 15 years of our friendship that has not allowed you to unveil that thing, I'm so sorry. And I was like, oh man, it just broke my heart. And I was like, there was nothing. There's nothing, not a sentence in the English language or Irish language that I could have said that would have had more value than what he said.
All good, Diarmuid? Comfortable?
Rock a minute roll, mate.
Rockin' and roll. All right, rock August roll. Lads, welcome. Lovely to be here and to be joined by, I think we decided on cutthroat marketing executive, Diarmuid Lyng. But no, honestly,
see what you did to him.
Brilliant. Irish language promoter, teacher, educator, GAA player, men's
sign up for my corporate masterclass on marketing. Yeah, man, all those
crypto king,
yeah.
Oh, lovely.
Diarmuid Lyng, very, very excited to have you here, Diarmuid. Thanks so much.
There's a nice ring to it, Diarmuid Lyng, the crypto king.
Yeah.
Yes, it's lovely. It's lovely. I've been in the woods for the last couple of days, over in Mahon Woods.
Right.
Mahon Woods, maybe it's spelled, isn't it? Not spelled as it should be. I feel like M-O-O. It's just I had a different idea of the word, but Mahon Woods or Mahon. Do you know it? Mahon or
I
Mahon?
don't actually know.
Gorgeous place. There's a rat over there, is that a stone circle? I think it's more of a rat. Like it was obviously a place where people, tribes lived. Fado, and there's a gorgeous forest down beside it, and we headed in there since Friday with a bunch of fellas. I ran a stag last year up in Carol Youngus's place outside Listonvarn on the Burn. And this fella, it always takes one kind of oddball to someone who's thinking a bit differently to say, I see what you're doing, and I'd like to get, I'd like to do something, and it might be a GA team who want to go for a camp, or it might be a fella who wants to run a stag, and I have this kind of little boiling idea there of I have wild Irish stags. I'm running stags, alternate stags, because we've all done I think that's that. Bring the stripper out and stand up on the tables, and it's just like, so. Anyway, it's not it's no great marketing strategy. It's just like a fella asked me, Patch O'Leary from I Have a Tribe, asked me would I run a stag in Clarny National Park for his buddy. And what I noticed very clearly with any of these things, any of these thresholds that we have to cross, is that we've butchered them. That one in particular for men. It's like, okay, absolutely, it's great crack. Like, it's all great. It's all that. Getting languid, doing cocaine, whatever you do, whatever you do that's fine. But there's at least at some stage, acknowledge my good friend Bart is about to get married. Yeah. The single man is about to die, and he has to die in Bart. And he has to say goodbye to him, and all the possibilities and all those numbers that are in your phone that are like, oh well, if it wasn't if I wasn't with her, that could be with her. You know, like all all those, or when you're having when you're out with your partner for a week or whatever, and you're like, oh Jesus, life would be better with that fucking one that I was with. You know, all these thoughts, and that part of you has to die. And you need your boys around you to help with that. And it has at some stage in the day, just at some stage, stop the day and say, right, now we're going to acknowledge something, and in whatever way you want to do it. I mean, I tried to make it, because I know the lads are so uncomfortable in these positions. Now, we went into Killarney National Park on this first one. Patrick brought 20 frocks that you'd wear to the Galway races, dressed the boys up in the frocks. They were walking around with cans in the frocks, and we played a hurling match out in the Killarney National Park. It was the most and bonnets, like proper bonnets tied to them, like and they're tied like helmets under their chin. You know, they were priceless, bright, fine, big, strong fellas in these dresses, and we played a hurling match, and I was going for it. My communication with them, just talking very clearly. You were asking me questions, I was going for it back, and I could see they were interested, to say the least, you know. And then we went in, and we were under these trees, and I had kind of put a tarp there, and we were under it, and I put hessian sacks out on the sand. I had a fire pit, and it's so hard, because you're like, oh, you can hide, and like, because you're not allowed, even though like my contract is with the forest, it's not with the keepers of, like, the fellas who tell you what you can and can't do. Like, I will never put a fire down in on the soil. Like, it'll always be stones, risen, whatever. So you have that, you're not allowed to do this, and I'm like, oh, whatever, like, you know, this needs to be done. So let's just trust that. So we're there anyway, and I have the pot, and it's acknowledged lads, and we pass around a bottle of whiskey, and everyone gets a little sup, and we drink to Patrick, and then, or Patrick's friend, and I said, right, I'm going to give you around a piece of paper, and everybody wrote. I said, you can write down what it is you want to celebrate about him. I said, I know you won't be able to say it to him, or you won't be able to give it to him, so you can just burn it in the fire and let that go. You have to kind of make it that safe for them. You have, like, it's so foreign, you know, that like if it comes to some real communication, like, it's really, you know, they really back off. Now, as it happened at the end, was they were an amazing bunch of fellas, and we had a great time. And maybe I even held it back too much. Maybe I could have gone much harder. I'm not sure. I wasn't so sure what I was dealing with at the time either. But I went in with them to Killarney, which was a mistake, because in some respects I'm the celebrant holding the space, and I realised that I've made that mistake a couple of times, where you kind of go on the bus a little bit with them. You know, I'm kind of in on it, and I love going into Killarney and a few tunes, and, you know, it's a great crack, like. But when we were out, like, it was almost, at times there was like a queue of them, 3 or 4 of them, waiting to talk to me. And I don't say that in any form of like arrogance or anything like that. No. There was a window open, a crack in the door for these fellas in their lives, where they're clearly not getting any opportunity to have real and open conversations about what's going on for them, the struggles that they have, the delights that they have, the wins, the losses, whatever it is. But they found, I just got this sense of like they found somebody who they could now speak freely. Like, they're not, it's not a thing, and I don't feel it so much sometimes, but not so much where I'm like, they came to kneel at the door of the master, like, not at all. They actually just wanted a listener. They just wanted to be heard, or to be acknowledged, or to be seen, and for the scale of what's actually going on for them, somebody they could see. I was somebody who was able for that, and they were just. And they just like fucking, whoa, yes, finally. And they just wanted to unload, and that's what they were doing, you know. Now,
but I would think that, you know, the ritualistic drinking and stuff that goes on at a stag is like in some way a searching for that anyway. Like, to get to the point where you can actually give your mate a hug and tell him something, you know. Like, I don't think that comes from nowhere. I think what you're describing there is like there's a natural draw, and people have lost the way there.
Absolutely, you know? For sure. Gee, sure, there'd be a totally hostile view of the human being to suggest otherwise. Why? I mean, you'd have to ask that question for sure. Like, and is that strategized? Has that been strategized? Is it propaganda? What is it? Or has it just been an unnatural evolution that maybe needs to be corrected? And I think that's the point that where a lot of people are coming to now with this, I think, recent rise in an awareness of whatever you kind of call it, spirit, Irish spirit. I don't know what it is, but it's kind of saying, like, you know, John Moriarty is probably the guide that a lot of people are going to.
Yeah.
And he's saying, we just need to reroute.
Yeah.
Just
stand Grand Canyon deep in the land.
Stand Grand Canyon deep in the world's karma. Yeah, man. That's it. Like, I mean, he said many things, but his overall sense is that, like, look at, we maybe went off track a little bit here, and if we just come back, and we have an exceptionally rich, now the scale of how rich it is, people have differing ideas, and our influences on the world, you know, it's not just Ireland, it's on the world. I don't know about that. I'm only interested in mining it in myself and sharing it and figuring out how to do that, you know, because it is there, and if you do it, then other people seem to have permission, and they seem to want it. As you said, they do want it. The problem is you go to somewhere like, you know, Earthsong, or when you stop drinking out of habit, is you wake up in the morning after big nights where big things happen and big connections are made, and you remember all of it. You remember the moment, you remember what it tastes and feels and smells like. You remember the connection. It's not there's no ambiguity. It's very, very clear. And it's so refreshing to feel that, and until you do it, you don't really know what that feeling is like, you know. And I see the lads, like, even at the weekend, just the propensity to take as soon as there's a moment, where's the drink? Get a can out. It's so, and I'm looking at them and saying, like, lads, we want to, like, we've got a deer here, so we were doing a deer butchering and tanning kind of a weekend with this. So this crowd I did a stag with, this is where I started that story. I did this stag with them. They were just gorgeous. There was 20 of them. We played hurling on the beach and played a bit of rugby and went for a swim, and we built a sweat lodge, went off down to the beach at Fundrazr, did all of that stuff. And on the way back, there was 20 of them. He was a physio. The stag was a physio over in London, or over in England, in Leeds, and the team had obviously gone on some kind of, like, big winning journey, or maybe they got, like, something happened. You could see they were united by something, and it was lovely to be with them. 6 of the Irish fellas stopped at the pub on the way back from Fundrazr and didn't come. They just, that was it. They weren't doing a sweat lodge. It was too far, and they got uncomfortable, and so they started drinking. And I was like, okay, grand. It's disappointing, to be honest. The English fellas are with us. The English fellas are in, not on an Irish-English grounds, but I, like, my own people. I was just like, come on, lads, this is in us. Like, come on, like, it's okay. Like, but they weren't in that space, and that was fine. And you have these relationships anyway from when you're young, that it's probably time to leave, and you just stay in them out of habit. And then all of a sudden, and I'd say that to the stags very often now, I'd say, look, you're calling what to do. This is already going to be in the absurd to most people, but you're saying what you want to do is this for the day. If there are people who won't do it with you, for you, it's probably, they're people you're carrying. And I just learned that from seeing it in the fellas who, the second stag that I ran down in West Kerry, a fella arrived in, looked around, we were in this big old hostel place with dorms, and it was, like, rough enough, like, not rough, simple, very basic. There were a bunch of investment bankers from London, like, you know, they came in, your man just took one look around, and I just hear him calling the hotel down the road. He was like, I'm not doing it. And I was saying to Stag, that's great. He's not with you. It's time to say goodbye. You're carrying him. Yeah. And so it kind of and I love this in all of the work that I'm doing now with, you know, be it with teams or stags or whatever it is with the retreats. I want to cultivate the conditions always where behavior is the speaking. It's not, you know, don't tell you you're a great fella. He'll tell you you're a great fella, and then when you ask him to stand with you, he won't. And that's it. And if you can cultivate those conditions where behavior unveils what's inside the man, then the ambiguity's gone. You just know who's with you and who's not, you know.
Do you find that some people might be a bit scared to see that, like, that if they have this mate they've had since they were 5 years old, they don't want to look at the fact that maybe if the chips are down, your man is not going to be there? Like, when you ask people to show up.
On which side? On whose side? On the fella who left or on the stag?
No, on the stag.
On the stag, yeah. Like,
Oh yeah, nobody wants to admit it.
yeah,
No, because it's easier to carry on.
yeah, not look at it.
Yeah, it's just look at it, not look at it. Tomorrow I look at it. I know it needs to be looked at. Maybe the next day I'm busy. That kind of thing. It's just one of those things. There's so many different things to look at in any one day, I suppose, you know. But this just brings it to the fore. But I'm very conscious. I don't want to start too many stories without finishing them off. I brought those fellas in. We did a sweat lodge. 6 of them cleared out. I think there was maybe 14 of us in it. It's nearly 8 months now since it, so I've kind of digested it enough. It's hard in the sweat lodge to know what to communicate because it's you know, there's quite it's whatever, it's a sacred space, whatever anybody's interpretation of what a sacred space is, but there's things that are past that obviously can't be brought out of it. But 3 or 4 of them just went for it, like just really let loose, you know, just let go of what, you know, deep grief, deep shame and privation and self-flagellation and all of that stuff, and just let it go, you know. And I was sitting there in the lodge, and for the first thing I'm thinking is, why do I have to cut down a load of willow or cull, hazel, haul tarps up from Kilkenny, haul 4 bags of blankets up, get hot stones from County Down, stick them in a fire pit, burn it all up, bring it into the fucking place to get lads talking. I'm like, why? We could have just had this conversation down the car park and we'd have been sorted. But anyway, flippantly, I say that, you know. But the lads, one of the lads dropped a kind of a bombshell in the middle of it, and, you know, it really unveiled himself. And I was like, you know, sometimes you go into this, we were talking about this idea of holding space, whatever that phrase means. And I was like, okay, there's the I train as more of a facilitator, so that's what I bring into that. You know, I'm just constantly trying to play with the conditions in that way. And I was like, okay, there's the facilitator's playbook now is like, right, he has to be honoured for his share so he doesn't feel isolated. And that's, you know, we have to champion his courage, and that's what you do, you know. But instinct is very different to the facilitator's playbook, even though there's a lot of instinct within facilitation itself, obviously. And I just didn't say anything. I just sat in it and sat in the silence for a minute and just feeling that something, that's not the way. That's what I felt. The playbook isn't the way. It was more that. It wasn't for something because I didn't know what was going to come. It was more that level of sharing does not require me to say something as banal as something that was written in a book by somebody else. Yeah. That's not required. So I'm just going to shut my mouth. And then the fella beside him, or close, I don't know where he was because it's pitch black, but he was in the sweat lodge somewhere. He said, if there's anything that I've done in the last 15 years of our friendship that has not allowed you to unveil that thing, I'm so sorry. And I was like, oh man, it just broke my heart. Like, and I was like, there's nothing, not a sentence in the English language or Irish language that I could have said that would have had more value than what he said. And from there, then it just kicked off. And after a while, I'd lie back on the ground. I was like, this is like, I'm at work here. Like, I'm getting paid to do this. This is unbelievable. Like, not the sweat lodge necessarily, but the day.
So meaningful too.
It's just so gorgeous, like, to be witnessing fellas like this, you know. Yeah. And it's not just because, like, I feel very fortunate. Like, there's plenty of people around me who, if there's 2 questions on a phone call of an hour long sometimes, and it's, how are you? And they're not saying, how are you? They're saying, how are you? How are your bones? How are you? And then at the end of me talking about what's going on, and I've cleared it out, I'm like, how are you? And I get that. And that's not par for the course, but I have surrounded myself more. I'm drawn more to people who are holding that because it's so clearly needed for understanding and, you know, whatever. And you can see in these fellas, it's the great privilege of it, I suppose, is the suffering that they're enduring in their silence. That's what stands out more. It's not like, okay, I'm high on the realization, or like this wasn't on the CAO form. Like, that I'm working. now. Oh, wow, what a job!
But of course it
What a
wasn't of the
job,
CEO for
So that, yeah.
Like,
But that's
They don't
so
want it on that
yeah.
format.
no. But that's there, and that's great. But what I suppose what deepens, it's not just that I'm getting my little kick. It's that it's the scale of the struggle that they're in their silence, not having any outlet for that, and all of a sudden now they have it, and you're involved in that. That's a nice part of it. But just seeing the lads break out of that silence and witnessing it is, like you just lie back and it's bliss. I think it's probably the closest thing I know other than playing hurling to bliss.
Glad you got that in
Because
there.
that's pretty
But I
close
think that's
to.
why you have to get the stones from down and the tarps from Kilkenny, is like, because there is such a force or such a weight on those lads that you actually need to kind of pull that blanket off a little way, and then like there is a lot working against them.
Yeah.
And then when you lift that, and you just give them that tiny opening,
Yeah.
jump in it. Sorry, is the mic weird?
You keep chatting away.
Yeah. But that was very moving. I can really feel that, Jim.
So those boys anyway came back this weekend. They just booked another trip. They didn't have a stag or didn't have any reason for it, which I love. Why do we? I think we have to wait for someone to die to celebrate them. Like it's like we don't need an event. Always just a bunch of fellas came. So 12 of them came over, and I brought them to Mahoon and Diarmuid McGivney from Mullach and Gerard, who has a second name, was our chef, who's from Sligo, via Connemara, and he was doing the cooking, and we set ourselves up in the woods, and the lads came in, and we brought in a deer, and we skinned the deer, butchered the deer, and then tanned the hide. And that was kind of for the lads, giving them that experience. But it's funny, like I suppose I'm still integrating the process of it. Like, and when one of the things I definitely notice is when lads are working together like that, particularly in a kind of a primal setting like this, ground is uneven. We've built. That's what I do as well. We find the forest, and then my attitude. There's a great kind of attitude of like, leave it as you found it. And I don't quite believe in that. I believe in leave it better than you found it. So we built benches and built a fireplace. And so the decision is to either keep it or leave it. And I think, well, we leave it because now somebody else might come along and put a table in, and somebody else might make a little rockery. Or you can create spaces by building with other people over time, And
you're also in dialogue with the land that way. Like, if it's an appropriate place for people to gather, then why not start?
And the transformation
that?
of the camp exactly speaks to that, because you've got this place that's like, you can't see it. It's old, overrun. There's nobody there. It's no footfall, and then all of a sudden, within a few hours, it's a camp, and it's come to life, and it's clear, and you can see pathways, and it's just, it's fresh and it's new.
It has like a roof or something. I think like it feels like there's a real whole. Anthony did his wedding ceremony in our field with a maypole and like loads of ribbons coming from it and being held, and it's like they built a little church in my field. Like, it really feels like there's a little church now. Like that energy is so held. I love as well that you started providing a stag for the lads, and now you're butchering stags. That came out so wrong.
That totally bypassed me. Brilliant.
But it's like
that's happened now. That's what's happening more and more. Is the stags that I've run, they want to just get together again and for me to do something else. So I just think of, like, I've got so many incredibly talented people around me that I'm just like, Timmy Creed, actor, let's go in and just do like an acting weekend, or let's play with different things. Diarmuid, do a deer tan, whatever, basket, whatever it is. There's loads of people around. You can just bring them in, do what you want to do. Like, let's just go do something that upskills us all, So I'm trying to impress that upon them as well. That it's not a, sometimes at the end of these things they say, "Oh, that was good crack," and it's like, I'm not in the entertainment industry, man. Yeah. I'm not here to entertain you. Like, I'm not. We're working shoulder to shoulder. We're going to open a space for sharing. Generally, because lads are working shoulder to shoulder, there's something very safe in that. And when the share comes, then it's really, really same again yesterday. Like, the lads were just going for like real 3 or 4 of them, like real healing, like serious stories and real healing. You can see they're just unveiling something, and it's been held so well by the group as well, you know. So they're like, and without plant medicine or without meditation or without, I mean, we've a ritual around the deer, like we've a celebration of the deer, and we you know, in the morning time we went crawl on the forest floor and like moving so slowly, like as if you're stalking or hunting something, and your hand is going into the moss. I remember at one stage I was with bare feet, and there's like sticks, and you'd do damage if you weren't walking, as Moriarty would say, with a barefoot mind and a barefoot heart. Like you had to be walking very softly on the land. And at one stage you could see the moss on the rocks amongst, and you could kind of make your way from rock, and then you'd turn around, because it's like a morning yoga stretch, but it's live. I'm not a big believer like go to that stand and go to that stand. I'm like, okay, well, what happens if I bring my arm here? Okay, there's the limit of that. What happens if I put my arm up here with that? And what if I lean back here? And there's just this constant dialogue with the body. So I'm moving around the forest. They're all like, the 12 lads are like hunting around the forest like that. It's brilliant, like rolling off the trees. And, you know, it's great to see them giving into it. Like, and at one stage there was a rock, and I put my foot into it, the moss on the rock, but there was no rock under the moss. And my bare foot went into it, and the moss just folded around my foot. I just staring at it. It's just so beautiful, you know. And lads are picking up. There was one fella at one stage, he was walking along, and I saw him getting caught, and he's quite intellectual man. And I said, he's gone off into the information of the forest, you know. Moriarty has that great story where he walks through the forest with a botanist, and he's saying, the botanist is saying, oh, there's this plant, and here's this plant, and that's the history of that, and that's it in Latin, and bang, bang, bang. And they walked through the forest, and I was like, oh, what did you think of the forest? And he said, oh, it's great. I filled my notebook. I have all of this information. And then Moriarty's like, but what did you think of the forest? Like, did you meet the forest, you know? Yeah. So this fella, I know, I thought had slipped down that track, and a bit of judgment came up in my head. I'm like, oh, don't get out of your head and get into the forest floor. And then when he was chatting, when we had our share, he was saying he came across this branch. This fella now is very capable, very beautiful, very high performing kind of a fella. 5 kids, like really, you know, very like after doing it well. But he said there's a tree, and the tree had fallen over, but there was one part of the tree that was still rooted and was still alive, and he could see his own life force in that there was, he was kind of holding on by a string, where other pieces were kind of under pressure from the strain of, you know, just not having maybe cleared out the losses or whatever it was, you know. But that's what he was lost in. So that's the kind of stuff that people are dealing with when they slow down and really come into the rhythm of the forest. That's the level you start feeling and thinking at. So then when the shares come, you just put a stick down, and I've kind of gone away from who's your hero, what's your hardship or whatever. I'm just like, how are you? Like, how are you in your losses? How are you 5 minutes before you go to sleep? How are you in your bones? How are you? Just to check in, how are you? And then just let people, this is what's going on, and to hear them after the likes of those experiences be able to articulate what's going on for them. They've kind of found the answers in the work, in each other, in the forest, it's all happening. There is no work on my part other than actually kind of getting the tables, getting the food, getting all that stuff. That's the work.
That's something I'd love to speak to Diarmuid, because as you were talking,
I know. I feel like I'm doing an awful lot of talking.
You're perfect,
sorry,
man. Where
I don't need any prompting.
I prefer a conversation. Like,
no. It's there's so much there, man. And you're right. It is a story that deserves a beginning, a middle, and an end.
You try and put some shape.
But what's coming up for me is this connection with the land, because. And it might take me a while to untangle this myself, but you know, you're kind of talking about how that man was ready to shared, and you didn't go to the playbook. You left a space, and then in the space, his friend came in and said something much more powerful. Yeah. And it seems like that's a bit of a theme that's coming up, because I do believe there is a natural attraction, a natural need for ritualistic practice, for group practice, for connection with nature. We've evolved this way. It makes sense that we need it. Yeah. We have distanced ourselves from it. There are now people coming back in to facilitate it. Yeah. But sometimes it can become a little bit about the facilitator or the method, you know? And it really
heavy territory, man. Heavy territory.
I think it's important, man, because there's such a need for this at the moment. So many people are searching. Yeah. And what I love about what you're saying, Diarmuid, is you seem to be really there to link in this example, men with nature, or men with behavior, or men with practice. It is not about the Diarmuid Lyng 5-step method to, reconnecting with your animalistic nature or whatever, know. And I'm just, because it reminds me of something Michael Mead said, the storyteller. He's like, at a certain stage in your practice, there will be no tracks to follow, because there won't be people that have gone ahead. Because if you're really in your truth, if you're really doing things the way you and only you can do them. And he says at that stage, what do you do? And his answer is, and I love it, so it's quick, and I'm just going to quote it. He says at that stage, you look for dreams, visions, and nature guides. So I suppose I'm just wondering, how do you feel about that, Diarmuid? How do you carry out your work? How do you view your role in it?
Yeah, it's a very pertinent question. I suppose because I the same as everybody else on different things, maybe learn at the school of hard knocks, of making mistakes. And I was very fortunate to reach, I was super fortunate to reach the heights of the game that I loved the most. I didn't reach the heights that I wanted to, but I reached the heights that I was capable of in my own experience, and I developed a mastery of hurling. Now, I didn't master the game of hurling. There is no mastering in the game of hurling, but at some stage, mastery came into my body. And so now if I put down a hurl for a year and pick it back up, it's just there, which is so nice to get that opportunity. But I also fell foul of the entertainment of sport. I also fell foul of ego, of trying to angle, this is it now, don't mind talking about the fellas in the woods, let's talk about hurling because this is where I'm king. And you're doing that all the time, and then you're meeting people all the time, and they're projecting their own maybe unfulfilled hero ambitions on you because you followed them, and they're never meeting you. They're meeting, you're Bart the podcaster, you're doing the thing, or whatever it is. That I'd love to start a podcast, and they haven't done it, but you have done it, and so they don't meet you; they meet their projection. But that leaves you in this void of who cares? Not like who cares about me, but who's willing to meet me, or who's willing to, I'm giving them all this energy, and they just seem to be taking it all. And I saw this more, not with myself, I saw this much more with greater, like the heroes, the gods of my game, like George O'Connor was a god to me, and I saw it with him. And so I became quite wary of it, but I did fall into the trap of the ego. And anytime I kind of believed something about myself, it was just a straight shot to, I ruined my body. I took it to the total max and got the hardest knock and lesson that I could have gotten. Well, within reason. But so now I certainly enjoy, I get invited by you guys to come in and chat, and there's a reason for that. Is because you see the work that I'm doing, or you hear about it somewhere, and you're acknowledging it and saying I see what it is and I appreciate it, and I love to come to a place and come in and put crisp and dry in my hair and have a pancake and have a chat, and it's great, So there are benefits to it, but I in my work now, I am firmly of the belief that all I am, everything that you need is in you. I know it's an old adage, but it's everything, that's kind of the cornerstone. That's from that point I design what it is I'm doing out of there. That's the center point. So anytime I put myself into the middle of that, certain destruction, certain chaos. Anytime all I'm trying to do is create the conditions where you even realize that it's all in you. That's my aim. So all of it, I think maybe sometimes there's a bit of what might look like mission drift, or it's not maybe all marketable in the right sense of it. Like the GA teams are looking at the Wild Stag saying, he's a lunatic, I can't work with that fella. But it's all coming from the same playbook. And that's the fundamental belief that everything that I do not have, I have certainly, I've certainly got experiences, and I'm happy to tell stories that might unveil to you something that might be of value to you. But fundamentally, in what I'm doing in my work is I'm cultivating the conditions where you firstly realize that you have everything you need, and secondly, I want to give you an opportunity to stretch that muscle. And once you do it, you feel it and you realize it. It's it's revelatory for people, and the lads coming back. Like, now I don't know where maybe before, but what they're saying is the English lads even coming back, like lives transformed from the time of the sweat lodge. Now that's sweat lodge as well. I'm not holding on to that too tight, but like I am delighted that my work. It's a great privilege to be in somebody's story. They say like, you know what, that something changed there. And I don't remember your man's name, but we did this sweat lodge, and that's, you know, that's cool. That's and great.
And the sweat lodge is like literally that, or maybe figuratively, but it's like that void. It's like the womb space, the endless potential space. So I find it so interesting. Like, well, there's so many things coming up.
I know.
But it's like, well, first of all, I love what you were saying about hurling, because I think hurling is like such a magical, mystical sport. It has that much more than any other sport I know. Like the fairies play, you know, like that doesn't happen in soccer. You know what I mean? Well, I've heard about actually ghosts playing football and doing them, but that's different. But I love the fact that if you're king hurler, that's such an easy ego trap, especially in this country, because that means you're Fionn McCool or something, you know, like you're battering lads of lads, and everyone loves that. But I love that brought you to going, no, okay, actually it's not that. It's not the ego thing, because everything you keep talking to is like space. I'm here to make space, and then it'll come if I don't get in the way. And what I really wanted to ask, I suppose, is I really understand, like, I find it quite moving listening to you. I feel it in my body. I'm like, yeah, this is where it's at. I love this. I love this work with men as well. It's so necessary. I've seen it when doing it with Niall Graham. Like, it's so powerful, and that honouring of when someone shares something vulnerable. I also thought, like, it's funny because you're like I say, you don't need any prompting. So I already had so many things to say about that.
I'm getting that sense here, Bart.
No, but it's brilliant. Like, it's beautiful. It's all beautiful. I'm nearly like, I don't need to say anything. But even when you said that, like, how are you 5 minutes before you go to sleep? Jesus, that's such a sweet thing to ask a man. I think you don't see a lot of that. But anyway, what I wanted to ask, and then I'll let you trot on.
No, it's nice.
No, I'm only messing with you because I know you can take it. But I have a real sense of it. But what do you think you're looking for in that space? What do you want to, like? I understand, like, you want the lads to be held, and you want them to share, and you feel that there's a great need. I really understand it. I can feel it. But I just wonder, maybe even like cerebrally, like, what. You're making all this space. You're going to great efforts to make all this space. What do you think? What do you want, or what do you feel is emerging in that space?
I suppose I feel like by some dint, I never quite understood it, and I'm only beginning to understand it now. Like, I mean, I've had a very interesting, to me, interesting journey with, for example, my name. And I know it's a thing of with tribes around the world where, you know, the medicine man would give you your name at birth, and then you'd have to assume a nickname that you'd go by until you grew into your name. And when I was like 4, my father started calling me Gizmo because we watched the Gremlins. I was afraid of my life with him, and he started calling me Gizmo, and that stuck, and I became Gizzy. And because I was playing hurling, and I was a known hurler at a young age, because in those circles, you get a nickname and it kind of sticks, you know. So that's what happened. So I went by Gizzy, and that was like the mirroring of that. And then at 28, after I kind of broke down within the game, I was like, I went travelling, and I came back, and I was like, hang on a second, like, Diarmuid, this name that I've kind of almost been ashamed of all my life, is like, Diarmuid, man, you're sitting on a gold mine, like, this is a name, like, stop calling yourself Gizzy, this little thin, wispy sound, you know. It's like, Diarmuid, doesn't mean something, and Diarmuid, it means without envy. Like, it's a name to live to step into, you know. So I started doing that. But what I'm saying, I suppose, is there was a lot of, like, the hurling from a young age. I remember meeting for a long time. MTV came into Ireland in the 80s. We were getting a lot of, you know, that culture propaganda from the States and from England about what kind of society we should have and how we should go about our business. And we kind of, I think we took it hook, line and sinker, and I rejected all of my Irishness, my freckles or my red hair or my hurl or whatever it was. I rejected all of that because the lads who had the six pack and the bouncy blonde hair were getting, the girls were into them, and I just felt this kind of shame about it, and so that kind of continued throughout my life to some degree, until I realised, no, actually, that's a gold mine. That's that's something worth going into, and I'm doing none of this really particularly consciously. It was just like I was following a golden thread, not sure where it was going, So I suppose where I've landed on that now is to say there's a movement happening where, and it mirrors, I think, where we have all gone. I'm not sure for you fellas particularly, but I'm sure you're aware of it, that we rejected our own spiritual tradition for obvious reasons. We all went east. We picked up again the golden threads of a spiritual understanding, and we've brought them back now, and we're kind of starting to apply that to our own culture. And meditation and yoga were all they're all still in our culture and always were, but we'd forgotten, and we had let them go, and now we all kind of rediscovered them over here, and that's been such a bountiful experience for so many of us, because it's settled our systems again, because we have a rock to lie our head on, for a little while at least. And so I feel I'm in my nature somewhere predisposed to that. I was drawn, for some reason, the language came to life inside of me at some stage. The game was there. That little journey with the name, I feel like I'm from here, I feel like I'm from this place, and there's something of the Irish spirit that it really, even when I talk about it, it just comes to life in me, and there's the wild man that you'd know from the masculinity work, like that wild man who exists outside of, you can break down the king and the warrior and the magician and the lover, and they're all little subsections in that mythical journey. But then there's the wild man. He's no business with any of that stuff. He's his own fella, and there's something in the relationship with the Gael who has that wild man instinctively inside of him. And so I feel like I'm really just following. I feel like I'm being guided somewhere, and I feel I have a role. And that's why we're building that's why we're trying to do this cultural centre in Kilkenny. I might be wrong. I don't know. Well, the response and the reaction is similar to you said. There's there's something that you feel when I'm speaking. I get that all the time. I get people saying to me, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I've never told anybody, but I get that line a lot. There's some kind of reaction. I'm not fulfilling my role fully. I can feel that. I feel there's growth, but maybe there's just a trajectory, but at the same time, what I am looking for, to answer your question in a very roundabout way, is maybe a little bit like Ronan. I want to facilitate conditions within which that spirit can emerge in more people, because I think we're working from the head in. And it's leading to desolation of the interior experience, and it's serious. It's a serious thing. It's not to be trifled with. It's a serious thing, and I have my life now. I don't know. Like I got I hurt my chest last week. I thought I was dying. Like I'm 43. I've got 3 kids. Like I'm not messing around anymore. I'm about my work. Like I know what I want to do. I see it very clearly. I don't see the mechanics of it very clearly, but I can feel the spirit of it drawing me somewhere. And so I just want to play my role. I want to be part of whatever that is that has emerged, where, again, we have finally realised that cultural propaganda from the outside, American dream, individuality bullshit, is that, and that it's a return to actually ourselves, as we did privately first, but now culturally to return to ourselves and to mine our own culture, to mine our laws, to mine our understandings of nature, and all of that through the Brehon laws or through the language. That's all points to exactly where we are in the current ecocide, which is we have to get back to an understanding of nature, both internal and external. You can talk about sustainability all you want, but sustainability is merely just burning something else to sustain our current lives. That's what sustainability is. It's been totally repackaged as that. It's bullshit. Until we're willing to go back out. And people talk about going for a walk in the forest. Walk, get off the path and fucking climb a tree. Don't mind walking in it. Get into it, feel it. Spend time in it. Cross the threshold out of your head and into the forest where you're no longer, where you're thinking with it and you're not thinking about it, you know, like I feel it's all moving in that direction. So I'm, in some respects, you know, sell myself short as a businessman, in my ability to like sell what I do, which I would like to talk about, but I'm also like, I also know I'm ahead of a curve at the moment.
Yeah.
Wild Irish Retreat started 7 years ago. And isolating that clip now and playing it would sound horrible. But I don't mean it by, I know you wouldn't, I'm not saying, but I know it sounds as a soundbite terrible in some respects, but Wild Irish Retreat started 7 years ago. Now there's a litany of different organisations, people online, offline, who are running, you know, who see exactly as we saw, and it's happening. And so each time, now Siobhan, I've got a wife who sees, she's a seer. And it's totally, and also she's very courageous. And so the things that she sees are not palatable to people.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop her from seeing them. Now, you disagree with them all day, and that's fine. But as I've learned, because I've spent the time with her now, I'm like, well, in a year's time, I'll find out, like, oh yeah, that thing that you were saying that everybody laughed at, that's normal discourse now. And nobody is saying, by the way, oh, you were right on that. No. They're saying, that's normal discourse now, and that thing you're now saying, that's unpalatable.
Well, it's so interesting, Diarmuid, because I was chatting to a friend of the podcast and former guest, Bridget Bennett, who is practices in a Tibetan Buddhist lineage. And we were talking about this idea that you don't always do things for people. You know, you're talking about how entering the business world, how trying to sell yourself as a businessman, like we have to swim in those waters, but it can be quite difficult. And that we do things sometimes for people or for groups, but in these indigenous practices, you're doing them for the land, you know. And she was, I think we said this during the first phone call we had, but the image of the Buddha after he achieved enlightenment, one hand is like raised with thumb and forefinger pressed together, and one hand, the fingers are pointing down to the earth, because he said, I'm going to relieve all conscious beings from their karmic debt. And he's like, I'm not going to ask anyone for permission. The hand pointing down is, I'm going to make a contract with the earth. So it's not with human structures, it's not with human institutions. I mean, kind of what you're talking about, even with the void space and the facilitation and the going back to nature, is like you're literally connecting with non-human forces. Yeah. But then we live in a society where you also need to eat and so on. And it's and it sounds like Siobhan is doing a bit of this as well, where she is connecting with much bigger cycles than just an individual or an academic kind of concept. So
like so many layers.
And I can imagine that's a terrible conflict. And something you said, I hope you don't mind me sharing on the first call we had, was you're like, I could see a version of myself where I just go live on top of a mountain and meditate all day. But you know, to actually do the work in the world, you have to get messy, don't you? And you have to swim in these waters. And
okay, so there's many different things going on there. Absolutely. I understand what you're saying, and you do. And I'm meeting that now at the moment, because we're in the process of trying to raise €260,000 to buy our house. And once we buy the house, we will build a cultural language retreat centre. And that's going to be significant. It needs funding, it needs funders, it needs donors, it needs all of that stuff. Because, you know, people aren't paying. Wild Irish Stags, for example, is still, you know, even with the GA teams, to go on a camp and actually connect to each other is still like, what's he talking about? Get a sports psychologist in here. That's where the money is, and pay him 10 grand. And you know, actual connection, not interested. Because that's where the zeitgeist is. But I've no doubt in time that'll change. In relation to the business question, I'm getting a lot. I ran a retreat, total departure for me. I ran a retreat over in Dubai in March for 10 whatever C-suite fellas, you know, that level, millionaires. Great time, very simple, beautiful fellas, Irish men who've gone out and done questionable but great work in the world as regards like their their way forward. Like they just went and they did it, and they did deals with the Russians, and they went into the desert and did deals with the lads who I wouldn't be doing deals with, like I'd be too afraid, you know, but they did, and they stood their ground and they used their Cavan ignorance and their Kerry cop on and, you know, all that stuff. That's what they used, you know, and so I admired it greatly in them. And one of them said he'd, you know, give me a hand. I said, well, if you give me some money, I don't really want a hand. But anyway, he said he'd give me a hand. And so I sent him what we had as a kind of a pitch, and he said, I'd like if you were thinking more like in these terms. And he sent me like, you know, some
marketable
whatever pitch deck from some company who, whatever they do, and you know, present that and give your projections and all of that. Cool, I can do that. And as I'm doing it, I'm thinking of Man on Fire, you know, this film Man on Fire with Denzel Washington. And Denzel, as Christopher Walken said in it, is about to paint his masterpiece, and he just goes on the warpath, and goosebumps thinking about it, because it's just, he's on the side of right, and it's relentless, and it's unapologetic, because it's right. You know, there's been a great wrong done, and he wants to right it. And everybody who stands in his way says the same thing. Do you remember what it was? I'm just a professional. I'm just a professional. I'm just a professional. I'm just filling out my pitch deck.
Yeah.
I'm just appealing to the capitalist system. I'm just appealing to the capitalist system. And I can do that. Like, I can do that. I come from that background, you know. Like, my mother's a was a banker. My father's a QS, and you know, we're capable people. Like, do I want to do it? Not do I want to do it. I do, because I've got responsibilities. I've got my children, you know. I could lose this opportunity to buy this house if I don't get enough money. And that's serious for us. That's serious business, you know. We're in heavy waters at the moment. But like, it feels like, just do it. That's what they all say. Just play the game. Just play the game, man. Just play the game. And I'm like, I'm just a professional. I'm just a professional. I'm just a professional. But it's wrong. Fundamentally, there's something wrong, and it needs people to step off the, you know, that's Maria, to step off the footpath, like, and stand in front, stand on the road and say, no, I'm not doing it. I know I should do it, but I'm not. And part of it is not just, I want to go against. It's not that. It's imagining in you. And what I'm saying in my no is, I trust it. Yeah. I trust you don't have to do it. Because that's what we're all saying. We're all saying we just have to do it. And where does that end up? That ends up with people living in tents getting bombs dropped on them. There's no leap of imagination. We're dealing with this now head on, and we have to all sit and swim, and that's what we're all so uncomfortable with. The guilt of what we are part of to live the lives that we lead is what's happening over there. And how divorced actually our vote is from any real change. And so where I admire the people who are doing such incredible work on the Palestinian cause in Ireland, I don't know how to kind of get involved in some way that I feel is meaningful. I don't, and I struggle with it. I feel there's a great shame in that as well, you know. And now I'm trying to fundraise for my house and for a retreat centre. When that's happening, and it feels so selfish, and yet at the same time, I don't know what else to do other than say, your vote, go on, vote for, you know, make sure and vote for Roisin Garvey, make sure and, you know, whoever you follow, make sure and vote from Grant. But understand, first and foremost, your vote is what you spend your money on. That's your voting. You're voting with what you spend your money on. There's no two ways about it. The meat industry is questionable, to say the least. So we go out and we get some deer, which are just, the national herd is completely out of proportion at the moment. It needs to be brought back into proportion. And so there's culling going on, there's deer available. And it just means we're not willing to learn old crafts that we had at the drop of a hat from 6 years of age on. We're not able to do it because we're all so intellectual and intelligent. So I'm saying, well, okay, what I want to do is I want to create a centre where we can get back in touch with these skills, where a place where the spirit can re-emerge, a place where spirituality is safe. Not safe in the sense of spirituality, but safe even to talk about again. And that's my response to that. I don't want to, and that's why we tried to stay away from like going to the banks. I just didn't want any complicity in that racket. And so when I sit down to do my pitch deck, I feel the complicity And still, there's fellas still saying to me, still last night, like sports psychology coaches, performance coaches, whatever they are saying, yeah, you have to. And I'm like, fuck off, man. Fuck off. I don't have to. We don't have to. And I don't know if I'm right. And I'm banking my livelihood on it in some respects. And I feel a sadness in that. But like, it's not real. It's not real. Like, it just doesn't feel like it's real. It's a mirage, you know. It just feels like a mirage to me. And so when I'm out and I don't, sometimes people think, oh, you really love the forest and have the land, and I don't. My connection to the land really has to improve. Like I love being in those environments because it facilitates real experiences, and I get to, what I would say musically is I get to jam with nature. I'm not like, I know people who they'll go out like, and they could sit with a nettle and they could be crying and they could be talking to the bloody thing, like, and they're not mad people. They're able to hear a tree if you sit with it for whatever it is, 24, 26 hours of just straight sitting with a tree. Eventually you will get into be able to talk to the spirit of the tree. I mean, Native Americans have been doing it for thousands of years. Like, that's a Sundance way, you know. So that's doable. So I'm only dipping my toe, and I'm only a couple of steps ahead of people. But I'm saying to people, I'm not. Siobhan and other people are over here. Do you know this? The Tirthankara in Buddhist philosophy. No. The Tirthankara is the boatman, and the boatman takes the person from their island and brings them over to their progression of their next island when they've gone through whatever change they've gone through. And I feel like I understand myself to be a boatman. I don't understand myself to be the one who is they're being brought to. Or I'm kind of saying, I'm kind of like, come on over here. I know where it is. I've seen it. I know where it is, and I can bring you there. And then I get them in the boat. And what happens very often in the modern culture is then people are on the boat. Bart's on the boat with me now. He's like, oh, it's you.
Yeah, you're the one. Yeah.
You know where it is. And I'm like, yeah. I just know where it is, but I'm not it.
Yeah.
It's over there and it's for you. And there are other people who can bring them further afield, but I'm still in this, because I think of maybe the GA background of, I don't want to be too distant and divorced and go way off out into it too much. What I find is just that when I bring these people out into these places, they feel what I feel. They feel, oh, I'm stressed out. I'm not living at all my purpose. I'm not at all living my purposeful life. I'm way too harsh on my children. I'm you know, I have all these realizations. So in some respects, I'm almost like extractive in my thinking with the forest in that way, in that like I'm using the forest. But in the overall context, like I brought a team from Clare out to Inisheer last year. And we had this moment where there's 30 of them. I broke them off into 3 different groups, and one of them are like running up hills and doing press-ups and the physical side of it. Another group are doing something else, and I took one group, the kind of the main group, and I brought them down the road. We walked into a field, and I saw a gate into a field, and it's somebody's field, and I'm like, well, this is where we're going now. And I could feel as I opened the gate, it's in. I could feel like as I opened the gate, it's like, oh, something's in. You know, there's something happening. I could feel it in my body. And we walked into the field, and there was a council of stones. So it was like 13 stones in the. You couldn't see them. They were the grass was around them, and they were in a little dip. So it was like this perfect little circle that we walked into, and they all sat down. And now when that happens, already the jam has begun. We're starting. And so again, I asked them how they were doing. You know, I had different ideas, and I was like, "How are you doing? How are you all? You okay? What's happening? You know." And some lads aren't able for it, and they kind of bypass it. And I came to a fella, and he was beside me. It was a lovely day, but it was overcast. It's around sunset time. Inish man is to the west, and this fella's here beside me, and he's faced west, and he goes for it. Just the man is carrying some serious stuff, and he had to let go. And he let go, and we were just looking at it. It was beautiful, because I just see in that world sometimes men have to be vulnerable, and I don't buy that whole storyline at all, because I don't see it as vulnerability in a sense. When I see a man speaking like that, who's like speaking and there's tears coming out of his eyes, like I'm just like, whoa, there's a man.
It's another type of strength, isn't it?
That's a man, like, and he's able for all of himself.
Yeah.
What more manly is there than someone who's able for all of himself, you know? So he's going for it. And on the drop of his last sentence, on the drop, man, like a full stop, he stopped speaking. And for the first time in the day, the sun broke through the clouds over Inishmaan, but it didn't break through and illuminate the island. It broke through in a ray and illuminated him, and he just went, he glowed. And there's 13 witnesses to this moment. He just lit up beside me, and everybody's just standing there looking at him like, I said, what is going on? Like, they were so blown away by the moment. And then it came to me after that kind of moment calmed down after a couple of minutes, leaving it sit. And it's up to me then, and I'm just like, that's why I do this work. There's a jam between the humans and the nature and the rhythm, the timing, the beauty. It's there. And if we settle our stories, and if we come into a kind of a realness where it's not, that's why they say, oh, it was facilitated very well. I'm like, oh, fuck off, like an enjoyable time. Like, I don't give a shit if you don't enjoy it. Did it transform you? Like, did you step into a reality where you realise now this is possible more often? And if it did, I'd love to hear that. Yeah. Otherwise, you know, whatever, I haven't done my job well enough or whatever, you know, or they're not just open enough.
But it's 100% like it's this.
So that's, that's
even
all
when
that.
you're saying it now, I'm thinking like with certain things I'm up against at the moment, I'm like, oh yeah, I just need to be listening more for what's trying to come true. I need to have, there's a bit more space. But I also get like whenever you speak about, and you spoke about a little bit before we started, about how it's hard where the rubber meets the road. Like, well, I've said that a million times, but like I really associate that with being a dad as well. Where kind of kids tie you to the world in a way that's like there's no getting away. You can't go off and say like, oh, I'm gonna sit on that mountain. Yeah. It's like, no, there's fucking kids to feed. So where are you gonna say, because all that you were saying about that purity as well, I'm like, it's so true, and we need to say no. And I've always, well, not always, but definitely for the last 15 years, felt the no quite strong. And we were talking about this last week, I'm quite willing to burn shit down when I feel, oh, this is fucking no-go. Yeah. But what my challenge is not to be willing to be that kind of warrior, but actually to go, maybe you need to fucking yield a little bit and I'm not saying go with the man and
I understand
marketing
I understand,
but it's kind of like,
I'm with you, like,
no, I'm still okay. It's actually easy for me to burn shit down. How can I be, well, what Niall Graham would call be in kingship, kind of be that, in that, not in the warrior or in the wild man, but in that moment be the king who oversees it and goes, where does that belong? Where does that go? Okay, I can maybe give a bit here, but there is always a very hard line where it's like, and that's where we're not going. But I think that's where so I think what you're speaking to with the spaciousness is fucking inspiring, and I'm thinking like, even not having done work with you, but just listening to you, I'm like, okay, clear, that's already transforming me now. But then,
I think it's important to be I think it's important to be careful. Like, I have to be careful of it as well. The warrior and the magician and the king, and it's,
I don't know those roles very well either.
But what I'm saying is, that's a map.
Yeah.
And it's one of many.
Yeah.
And I am maybe in that context to a Niall Graham who understands that so intrinsically. Yeah. Unveiling my lack of kingship in being too stuck in the warrior or being too stuck in the wild man. That's a possibility. That's possible.
But it feels true, though. It feels true when you're speaking. I'm not like, sometimes you will see people. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
So that's what I'm saying is like, there is that in that understanding, but that's just one map, and there are many, many maps. Yeah. It's not the only show in town, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know. When I talk to Siobhan, like, she's talking about alternate realities, possibilities, and timelines that just make that stuff seem like kind of a bit small, to be honest. And so I even with Nature of Man as well, at times, like I reject a little bit of it, because I don't want to get lost in the intellectual of that, because I know where that goes. Let's go out and let's put our feet in the ground, or let's go out and play hurling, or whatever we're going to do, and let's just do it, and let's stop talking about any of these things. I admire and I love reading about it, and I love the understanding of it, and particularly love Niall's work, like I really do. But I feel it's just one map, and at the moment, I think I'm stepping up. There's a step away from that too, because maybe that exists within that same framework that's bringing us where we're going. I don't know about that. I haven't considered it, because I have enough things to consider already. I just think, like, it's also it's still a bet. Like, somebody's betting on the pitch deck, because it's proven. You're betting on that my business is going to be successful if I do this. But I would say the odds are completely and utterly stacked in my favor. That what I'm doing is a success, and that my son will realize in time, when he stops looking at me like I'm an idiot, that I followed my instinct, I followed my heart, I followed my head, I followed all of that. I'm looking, I'm constantly observing, reading, listening to people of what's in, what's moving, how's that influencing that. Like I'm very analytical in that context. Constantly looking for that. Is that the right? Am I doing the right? Looking, and then also trusting that, trying to trust the unfolding moment. This is what I've been given. It either has benefit or it doesn't. I imagine it has more benefit if I live it fully.
100%.
And so let's put the chips on that.
100%. And I'm not speaking against any of that. I don't feel
you are, Bart.
Because I also really don't want to intellectualize things. But it's always, I'm just talking to that the challenge of it is, we talk a lot about like things in its right place. Yeah. I think the way you're speaking, it seems like you have things in the right place, or you're working from an aligned sort of space. But I'm just saying that the part I find tricky is that it's not about just being right, but it's also about being so fucking nuanced, and not intellectually nuanced. Yeah. But being nuanced in like, oh, am I doing too much of this now? Is there ego in this? Is there, it's just, and that's the thing, like finding that interaction with the real world. Yeah, I'm not expressing myself very well.
I wonder, is the uncertainty part of it?
I
wonder, is that where faith comes in? Because if you were just like, yeah, no, I'm doing everything right. Yeah. I'm it. I'm the solution for all the world's problems. I think somebody who has that attitude might be less capable than somebody who is searching. Yeah. Somebody who acknowledges their own fallibility. Somebody acknowledges the fact that it's, that success is not guaranteed. I think it maybe that uncertainty is what drives us to look for bigger things, to look to nature and to ritual and to other practices and stuff. Because if you're certain, it's a bit of an egotistical thing. You're like, I'm capable. Like, I have enough right now. But if you're uncertain, you're always searching. You're always reaching for things outside of yourself. And I think, again, we've been quoting this a lot lately myself. It's funny that you mentioned Moriarty. I've been reading Turtle Was Gone a Long Time. But and he's talking about the ravens. I think it was the prophet Elijah went out into the desert, and God sent ravens to feed him and to guide him, And that was Moriarty's thing when he walked away from his lectureship position and stuff. He's like, I'm going out into the wild, and I'm going to have faith
my bush
in
soul.
that God will send ravens to care for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with all that, man. Well, I'll have to say, that's well put.
I want to ask you, and this is to come back to earth. Practically, Diarmuid, what can people do to help you out? Because I kind of wish this is one of the episodes where our entire listenership could be in the room with us, Diarmuid, because it's been incredibly powerful, incredibly moving to hear you speak. And I hope that comes across, but like to be in the room with your, and I've said it before, I think there are a lot of people involved in this space, but I think you are trying to do something I think you're a very good example of it, Diarmuid. And I don't think everyone is the best example of it. And
Thanks,
you
man.
know, you're not taking the easy road. You know, the phrase pitch deck has come up in this episode an awful lot.
Yeah. It's the bane of my life. That pitch deck, man.
But you know, you were not doing it, and that the easy way, the standard way, because you're trying to do something new, and you're trying to do something that is not beholden to social norms and current zeitgeists, but is something a little bit bigger. And you never know. I hope there's people listening that might want to help you facilitate that, Diarmuid.
Yeah.
I know I would, and I'm asking, what can people do?
I suppose, you know, it's been such an interesting journey over the last few weeks, and that's why there's so much coming through as well. Is like I've gone to people now in my, you know, I have a wide array of contacts from different worlds, like from teaching to hurling to the community that I run with now, and you know, I've do stuff in the papers or and people feel like they know me maybe as well from different things, because I've kind of always unveiled myself in the different things that I've done, you know. And I made the mistake of asking the wrong people for money for this project, because we didn't want to go through the banks. I had an idea of it being a community experience, and we can just you know, as my uncle used to say, like, they go down to the pub on a Friday night, and one fella be in with a few pound and he'd buy the pints for everyone, and the next week somebody else would be in and he'd buy them. And I just like that community dependency, and I'm not afraid of, you know, I'm being judged by the people in my life as that I've gone begging to people for money, like, you know, and they're disgusted by it. They can't even talk about it to me. They can't even look at it. They're disgusted by me, by my actions, because they perceive it as begging. I don't know how they got their mortgages. They went, they had to go, and they didn't have the money anyway. They had to go into the bank and they'd fucking ask for it, and it's not their money. Then they say, oh, you have to work for your whole. Yeah, you do, and that's what I have to do too. I have to pay it back too, like, you know. But I just believe there are people with loads, and I have something to offer them. I'm not coming with a cap in hand. I have something to offer,
and they will be delighted that thing is now they have that money already.
Yeah,
but what you're offering is not in the world as much as we'd want it to be.
Yeah,
so that's the exchange that they're making.
It's a very natural exchange. Very natural exchange. No, you know, it's from the West, as I see it very simply. In Ireland, even, you look at the West Coast, financially more impoverished, but culturally exceptionally rich. And on the East Coast, we are more culturally, I would say, to my mind anyway, maybe it's a judgment, but I think we're impoverished. But we're financially very rich, and we can stay on both sides and look over each other saying, oh, that's the way and this is the way, or we can, like, okay, well, there's a natural exchange there. We need a little bit more of that over here.
Perfect. And
you were like, well, we could do it with a little bit of the thing you have. You've got too much of it. We're overflowing with culture in our West Coast. We're overflowing. We are overflowing. We've so much. It's thousands of years old. It is so rich. It's everywhere. It's out in every single turn. It's in every single house. It's so rich. And we haven't worked out, we haven't facilitated that exchange. And so we're becoming, we want to facilitate that exchange. Now, I made the mistake of asking the wrong people. And what happened when I asked the wrong people was I realised not that they wouldn't give me money. That was like stressful to the fact that I had to raise what I had to raise and the time I had to raise it. What broke my heart, what pierced my heart, was I realised they didn't believe in me. I realised they didn't believe in my project. They didn't believe in my work. They didn't believe in it. Because I'm not a psychologist, because I'm not because I don't have all the letters to say that, you know, you should or you can do any of these things, that you can help anybody, you know, because caring isn't enough. It's better that you don't care but have loads of letters after your name and you know how to hand out prescriptions for drugs. That's what we want, you know. Whereas what I'm doing is different, you know. We're taking people back from the brink of many, many different situations in their lives that could end up, you know, are on the edge of being very, very serious, and we're reawakening themselves to themselves, and that's what's happening, and it's a wild success. It's a wild success. That's what it is, you know. And so I've asked around people, and that's gutted me from the inside out. It's been really hard to realise how little they think I'm in novelty. They think I'm in, it's foolhardy. It's, I don't know what they think. Like, I'm like, it's very hard for me to understand it. And I see it in the hurling world in particular, like where I'm saying, like, let's do these camps. Let's do a camp. I can keep the costs down to the bare minimum because we just mine what's in your area. I need to be paid, but that's really it. Other than that, I can figure it all out, you know. Everybody's the rule of the forest. Everybody brings a little bit, so there's no costing anybody too much, you know. In that time we spent in that forest, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on connection to yourself. I'm going to give you time for that. You're going to realise how fucking stressed out you are. You're going to realise how far off your own track you are, and you're going to come back to it. That's going to be really valuable to you. You're going to learn what's going on in the people's lives around you, so you know who's in the trench with you when you go into battle on the field. That's connection to each other. And then we're going to learn to connect to our place. We're going to realise, that plantation down there, maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe we should have a few Irish trees or a few native forests in our... What is down there? What's growing here? What's in my area? Are you out in your area, or do you just go from your house to your car, to work, to the pub, to the GA club, back in the car, back home? That's most people's experience. And I'm saying, no, I don't think that that's really the whole story. I think there's much more. Connection to yourself, connection to your teammate, connection to your place. That is the bedrock of the GA right there. That's it. That's fucking, to me, that is it. And then a sports psychologist comes in and he says, I can measure the mind, you know, I can control your mind. I can be in this, and the GA, here's 10 grand, man, here's 20 grand, man, let's go on a retreat with this fella, he's going to do this. And my heart, like, it just breaks my heart that he's championed, and I feel like I'm really at the bedrock of it, having experiences like that out on the island. Like, they talked to those boys that I worked, like, they were just so thrilled, you know. And it's not that they're picked ahead of me. That part of it's fine. That's like the commercial business, whatever, sales, you know, they're better at than I am. Grand, you get your whatever. Yeah. I'd be working on word of mouth probably anyway all of my life, you know. It's the disdain, it's the judgment. It's that they think that I feel that, you know, like because one manager said it to me. He was a former Kilkenny hurler. He said he told somebody that he was coming on a camp with me, and then he felt this need to defend why he would do it, because he knew there would be this judgment. And the GA boys say it to me, particularly the managers will say it, you know, they'll say like, oh, we're not going to be sitting around talking about our emotions, are we? And I'm like, what do you think? I don't give a shit about your emotions, man. I don't care about your emotions. I want to hear your story. I want to sit at the fire and I want to hear your story. Now, your story may be emotional. That's fucking nothing to do with me. That's your story. You own that. And fucking putting it on me and saying, judging me that I'm not. What are we going to be doing? It's like, I don't know what we're going to be doing. That's up to you. I'm going to facilitate it. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to see what it is. I'm going to look it square in the eye and I'm going to say, it's all welcome. It's all welcome. I have no boundaries. People say to us on retreats, every now and then there's a particular archetype coming to us at the moment. Big, strong fellas. And they're like, look, if I can't go. If I let go now, this retreat's over. And we're like, bring it on, man. Bring it on. And they do. And afterwards, oh, man. It'll bring you to tears, like to see the relief. And it's just so beautiful. And so for that stuff to be held in contempt or to be treated as weird, like from the people maybe closer to me or from a world I would have held, that's been hard to take. But what my realization is that there are people out there with resources, with contacts, with money, with ideas, with wealth, of all of that kind, and they know. They're also aware that we're a spirit that needs tending to, and they see the value of it, and they see the cultural movement, the value of it, and they see the language and the movement of it, and they see the value of it. And so I spoke to a man, a very successful, very wealthy man the other day. I didn't pitch him anything, I didn't ask him for anything, I just told him what I believe, and he told me what he believes, and he said, right, we need to sit down, and so we're going to sit down. And it's not, you know, there might be a 40,000 hole in our finances at the moment to reach the 260, and I could have asked him on the spot and maybe he'd have just fucking given it to me on the spot. I don't know.
But this will be more meaningful anyway.
But I know in the next 5 years we'll be trying to buy land around us, and we'll be planting forestry, and we'll be rewilding stuff. That's a big project. That's when his web of contacts will come in, you know. So in the short term, whatever anybody, like, people have been running fundraisers for us. That's been really nice. People have offered us stays for a week or does anything of value, anything that we want to go out. Our biggest ask with the fundraiser was like, if you're going to contribute, I want to give you something in return, like, because that's the essence of the centre. It's not a marketing ploy. It's like the essence of the centre is there's an exchange of energy, and we have to kind of move into that understanding of the world anyway of energy exchange. It's not like I want to get from you and you want to get from me. It's like, okay, let's sit down. You want that? Okay, I want to help you get that. I want this. Okay, I can help you get that. And the two of us are kind of on the track then to get the thing that we want. And it's much easier and much more enjoyable, as opposed to, I could get that out of Bart now and he wouldn't even know, you know. Fuck that. So I'm like, right, okay, I know already you'd love a week down in the Blasket Islands. I have this thing, this woman gave it. We can go down. I'll get Billy down there to offer the boat trip free as well. You go down, spend a week writing, planning your next year of a podcast, and that's the exchange. You pay 500 quid for it, and it's cheap as chips. And so any of those kind of offers, or that every offer and every message is a brick. It's all a brick in the imagination. Like we're dreaming it into existence, and every time somebody says, yeah, one fella gave the other day, gave €3. He was a local, he gave €3. That was the most valuable €3 guys. It was like, welcome to the area. We don't really know what you're doing, but we're happy you're here. Or something. It just felt so valuable.
I love that energy, because that's what was coming up in my mind, is that in your life, if you were living a rich, open life, you were going to come across people that are living their lives in vastly different ways to you. Doesn't matter what life you're living. There's somebody out there that's living a life in a way that you can't even imagine, and might be of tremendous value. Might not be for you. Yeah, you know. But I think being able to acknowledge that, being able to, like, Jesus, that guy, I cannot believe he's fucking doing that. But he seems to be happy. He seems to be making other people happy. I disagree with X, Y, Z. I would never be seen dead doing A, B, and C. Yeah. But I can see how true it is for him. You know, and that's what I felt with the boys in the desert. You know, like I had these judgments. I'm rich. What am I going over here for? Yeah. Then I heard their story, and I like, one of them was like the head of Nestle Russia, like, you know, Nestle is like, you know, in the worst of the worst in some regard. Yeah. But he was generous, and he was affable, and he was like light, and he'd undergone an incredible story. I was filled with admiration for the man.
And that's so hopeful, because then when it changes, then those lads are there as well in those big dark companies, and they can turn on the lights. Maybe. Yes. So practically now.
Yeah. Possibly.
People get onto you on Instagram, or what do you want? I know that's not ideal, but I'm just saying, like,
whatever. Diarmuid Lyng. There's Wild Irish is our CLG. Wild Irish, and there's a website there, wildirish.ie, and the link to the fundraiser. And we'll get all the links, and we'll put them in the show notes. That's all there. And then my own work, with, you know, some of the men's work is with Nature of Man, but that's all kind of linked on diarmuidlyng.ie, and it's the stags, and it's the Wild Irish stuff, and it's all the clubs. And where can people download your pitch deck, Diarmuid?
It's smouldering on fire in a corner somewhere.
I'll post it to him.
I'd say we didn't have a proper title for you at the beginning of the episode. I would just say Diarmuid Lyng, a beautiful man.
Thank you so much. Thanks very much, Bart. Likewise.
This has been Weshtern Philosophy. Follow us on all the socials at Weshtern Philosophy Pod. If you want to support the podcast, you can join our Patreon to help the show grow, or make a one-off donation via the Ko-fi link in the episode description. We'll be back next week with more chats and another topic. Slán.